Silence is the move that scares people the most because it doesn't tell them what you're planning. That's the punch hitting them right now. They didn't fear you when you were talking. They fear you now when your voice is gone and your actions are hidden behind that quiet shield. It's the kind of silence that doesn't drift or fade. It sits in the room like a locked door with something powerful behind it. And they know that whatever is behind that door is no longer harmless. Picture this: a crowded room, everybody talking, laughing, making noise like they always do. Then suddenly one person stops speaking. The air shifts. People feel it without even meaning to. It's like watching ripples freeze on a lake for 1 second too long. The universe wired humans to notice that shift. Scientists even say our brains react faster to sudden silence than to loud noise because quiet means change, threat, or movement. So when you went quiet, you didn't just disappear. You triggered their instincts. You became the thing they have to watch. Your silence became a spotlight they can't turn off. And thank you, chosen one. Don't forget to pay this message back by simply pressing like and subscribe to help spread this message to more souls, as it's the responsibility of all of us to spread the light. Thank you for being part of this mission. You're part of a force, a current moving quietly but reshaping everything it touches. Now let's get back to what's really going on. You've been too quiet lately, and not in the "I'm tired, leave me alone" way. This is the kind of quiet that feels like when the wind stops right before a storm breaks open. The sky looks normal, but the birds aren't singing anymore. The branches aren't moving. Everything is holding its breath. That's the type of energy you're carrying right now. Calm outside, calculated inside. And anyone who ever underestimated you is finally starting to sense it. You pulled back from talking about your plans. You stopped giving updates. You stopped explaining what you're doing or why you're doing it. You cut the noise around you, and when you cut noise, you cut access. That's what's messing with people the most. They used to feel like they knew where you stood. They don't anymore. They don't know if you're ahead of them or completely out of reach. They don't know if you're done or if you're preparing something you haven't spoken about yet. Their minds are filling in the blanks for you, and honestly, the scenarios they're imagining make you look more powerful than you ever claimed to be. Some people thought your silence meant weakness. They thought you had nothing left to say, nothing left to fight with. But silence isn't weakness. Silence is strategy. Silence is focus. Silence is what people choose when they're done wasting energy. And the second they realized you weren't quiet because you broke down, but quiet because you leveled up, that's when the fear settled in. Because someone who is silent by choice is someone who has control. Think of how nature works. The loudest animals are usually the most harmless. Birds chirp before they fly away. Small animals scream when they panic. But the real hunters, the ones everyone respects, they move almost silently. A tiger doesn't roar to announce the hunt. It watches, it studies, it waits. Quiet isn't a lack of power. Quiet is the presence of power that doesn't need noise to prove itself. And that's the exact energy you're giving off now. You're no longer feeding their curiosity. You're no longer explaining yourself to people who twisted your words. You're no longer giving away your next move. That's why they're pacing mentally. They don't know if you're done with them or preparing something bigger. They don't know if your quiet means peace or if it means you've switched into a different version of yourself. A version they can't predict, influence, or manipulate. Your quiet is not empty. It's packed. It's loaded. It's full of choices you haven't spoken out loud yet. People can sense that. They feel the difference between someone who's hiding and someone who's rebuilding. You're rebuilding. You're sorting your energy. You're locking your focus onto things that matter. And the universe has a funny way of backing people who stop wasting themselves. When you step back, the universe starts pushing you forward in ways others don't see yet. That's why they're talking. That's why they're guessing. That's why they're getting nervous. They can't measure you anymore. They can't tell if you've forgiven them, forgotten them, or outgrown them. They don't know if you're planning to reappear stronger or if you're already 10 steps past them. The unknown version of you is always the one people fear most, because people get brave when they can predict you. They get careful when they can't. Your silence is working like a mirror. It's throwing their insecurities back at them. They're not afraid of what you're saying. They're afraid of what you're not saying. They're afraid of what you might do next. They're afraid of the version of you they can't read anymore. And the truth is simple. When people lose access to you, they lose control over the story. Your quiet took that control away. The universe loves balance. There are seasons for speaking and seasons for stepping back. You're in the season of power conservation, where you gather yourself, rebuild your focus, and watch things from a distance. And the less you reveal, the more people respect the possibility of what you could do when you choose to move again. They won't admit it out loud, but your silence humbled them. It showed them they can't treat you any way they want and still expect you to show up the same. It showed them you're not a toy, not an option, not something they can read easily anymore. You've become a storm forming out of sight. You've become the quiet warning before the impact. You're not someone to be messed with, chosen one, not because you're shouting or fighting or proving anything. You're not to be messed with because your silence speaks for you. It tells the world that you move with intention, that you don't waste your voice, that you don't play around. And when the time comes to make your next move, they'll feel the hit long before they understand where it came from. Your silence is the announcement. Your distance is the warning, and the shift you're in right now, that's the reason they're finally realizing who they should have never taken lightly. And chosen one, seriously, thank you for being here. Your silence has already changed the energy around you, and what comes next will explain why it's shaking people up so much. So stay with me, because if you're really stepping into this new, quiet power, missing even one part of this breakdown would be a mistake. If this message is hitting your soul the way I know it is, drop the number 777 in the comments so I know you're ready to own this new version of you, the one they can't predict or play with anymore. And if you're able to support the team behind this message with a super thanks, it keeps this mission alive. It doesn't matter if it's a cent or a fortune. Every bit of support helps us push these truths out into the world and reach more people who need it. Now let's shift back into it, step by step. And trust me, if you really are who I think you are, you'll feel that pull to stay until the very last word. Let's begin. Number 1, they lost the remote control the second you went silent. Nothing scares a manipulator more than realizing the person they used to control isn't responding anymore. That's the hit landing right between their ribs right now. They thought you were easy to move. They thought snapping their fingers would still make you react. But your silence, your quiet stepping back, that hit them harder than any confrontation ever could, because it exposed the truth they've desperately avoided. Their power wasn't real. It was borrowed, and you just took it back. Here's the part they hate the most. They only looked strong when you were still giving them access. They only felt important when you let them close enough to pull on those invisible strings. They mistook your patience for obedience. They mistook your empathy for weakness. They mistook your attention for permission. But the second you pulled away, those strings snapped like cheap thread. Now they're standing there with their hands out, holding nothing but the memory of a control that doesn't exist anymore. Imagine this. Someone plays a video game with cheat codes for years. They think they're a genius player. They brag, they flex, they talk like they're unstoppable. Then, one day, the game removes all the cheats. Suddenly, every move is harder. Suddenly the player realizes they weren't skilled, they were spoiled. That's them right now. They aren't panicking because you changed. They're panicking because they're seeing the truth about themselves for the first time. Without you responding, reacting, defending, explaining, or proving anything, they have nothing to work with, nothing to push, nothing to twist. And the question you might be asking yourself is, why does my silence bother them so much? Simple. People who live off control need a reaction to survive. Reaction is their oxygen. They need to know they can still get to you. They need to know you still care enough to flinch. Your silence is cutting off their air supply. They can't breathe in the comfort of your attention anymore. They're suffocating on the emptiness you left behind. Your absence used to be unthinkable to them. Now it's the only thing they can think about. Here's a metaphor that hits exactly where it hurts them. Imagine a puppeteer bragging about how smoothly their puppet moves. But when the puppet steps off the stage and walks away on its own, the puppeteer is exposed as someone who never had real talent. That's what happened the moment you stopped dancing for their entertainment. You walked off the stage they built out of ego. And when you walked off, the spotlight followed you, not them. That's what really burned their pride. They're scrambling now, confused, agitated, pressured. You took away their favorite toy, your reaction. And without that reaction, they have to face themselves. That's the nightmare they've been running from for years. They're not the powerful mastermind they pretended to be. They're someone who only felt big when they were shrinking you. You walking away forced them to look at their real size, and it's much smaller than the version they tried to sell. They'll lie about it, of course. They'll pretend your silence doesn't matter. They'll act like they've moved on, like they're unbothered, like life is smooth. But behind closed doors, they're replaying everything. They're trying to decode words you said months ago. They're watching your old messages like crime scene footage. They're checking your page, your energy, your silence. They're obsessing because the one thing they can't stand is not knowing where you stand. They lost their scriptwriter the day you went quiet, and now they don't know how to act without you feeding them their lines. There's something twisted but satisfying about people who used to control the room, suddenly panicking when the quiet one stops participating. You were the stability they fed off, even when they tried to pretend you weren't. You were the emotional foundation they leaned on, even while they tried to break yours. Now that you've walked away, the ground under their feet is cracking. Everything they built was resting on your presence. Without you, nothing holds up. Think about a magician who depends on misdirection. They rely on controlling where the audience looks. But what happens when the audience stops looking? The trick falls apart. You stopped looking. You stepped back. You stopped handing them the attention they needed to maintain their illusion of control. Your silence ripped the curtain down on their whole act. And here's a fact the chosen one inside you needs to hear. Your silence is doing more damage to their ego than any argument ever could. Arguments give them fuel. Arguments give them a chance to twist things. Arguments give them a battlefield where they can pretend they're winning. But silence? Silence gives them nothing. Silence makes them run through every scenario in their head and realize none of them end with them on top. Silence is the checkmate they didn't see coming. That's why they're so bothered. That's why they're restless. That's why your quiet has become louder to them than anything you've said in the past year. They know you're not reacting, and that scares them. They know you're not playing their game, and that terrifies them. They know you're thinking for yourself now, and that's the part that destroys them the most. Because the truth is, the second someone like you stops dancing to someone else's rhythm, you start hearing your own. And once you hear your own rhythm, no one else's beat sounds powerful anymore. The universe always sides with the one who walks away from manipulation. The moment you stopped giving them access, the energy shifted, not just around you, but inside you. You went from reactive to selective. You went from controlled to self-directed. You went from being read like a book to becoming a closed vault with no handle. And people fear what they can't open. You're probably wondering, so what now? What happens next? The answer is simple and brutal. Let them deal with the silence they earned. Let them fight with the confusion they created. Let them argue with the version of you they made up in their heads, because the real you is already out of reach. You've evolved. You're not waiting for closure. You're not waiting for an apology. You're not waiting to be understood. You've stepped into power by stepping out of their world. And here's the sweetest truth of all. They're not trying to get the old you back. They're trying to get back the version of themselves they felt like when they had access to you. That version felt stronger, bigger, more important. But that version was fake. It only existed because they were draining energy from you. Now that the supply is gone, so is their sense of power. You didn't defeat them by fighting. You defeated them by realizing they were never worth fighting in the first place. You walked away. You went silent. You unplugged from their game. And now they're left standing on that empty stage, holding strings that no longer control anything, staring at a spotlight that doesn't shine for them anymore. Your quiet wasn't weakness. It was your evolution. And they're finally realizing that the one person they thought they could control has turned into the one person they should have never crossed. That's the real power, chosen one. They can't make you dance anymore because you're not on their stage. You're in your own arena now, and the universe is watching you rise. Number 2, they lost their food source. Now they're starving in silence. Nothing destroys an energy drainer faster than cutting off the person they were secretly feeding on. That's the punch that hits them right in the chest now, because here's the raw truth. Chosen one, they never cared about you. They cared about the power they felt when you cared. Imagine someone bragging about how strong they are, only for you to unplug the machine they were drawing electricity from. Suddenly, the lights go out. Suddenly, the room gets cold. Suddenly, the truth becomes impossible to ignore. That's what your silence did. You didn't walk away quietly. You shut down the entire power grid they depended on. Their ego is hungry now, starving, shaking. And the worst part for them, they can't admit it to anyone. People don't miss you. They miss the emotional high they got from access to you. That's the reality chewing holes in their mind. They never craved your presence. They craved the feeling of importance they got whenever they poked you, triggered you, flirted with you, argued with you, or watched you react. Every eye twitch, every sigh, every smile, every spark of emotion, all of it was fuel. You were the battery. They were the device pretending to run on its own power. And now you've unplugged them. Imagine this, a leech in water. It survives because it attaches itself to something warm, alive, moving. But take that warmth away. Pull your leg out of the water. What happens? It floats there, helpless, starving, slowly realizing it can't survive without a host. That's them right now. They weren't strong. They were attached. You're probably wondering something at this point. If they were using me, why do they act like they don't care now? Because pride won't let them show withdrawal. They won't show the shaking. They won't show the panic. They'll pretend the silence doesn't bother them while secretly checking for a sign from you, like someone checking a dead phone, hoping it randomly turns on. Your silence didn't hurt them, it exposed their dependency. That's what stings. Before, they could predict you. They could say one thing and get a reaction. They could do something small and you'd respond. It made them feel powerful. It made them feel relevant. But when you disappeared into your quiet world, when you stopped giving emotional updates, when you stopped feeding them even the smallest drop of your energy, they realized something horrifying. They don't know how to feel important without you. Imagine a mosquito that has lived its whole life inside a house. It thinks the world is full of endless warm skin to bite. Then one day, the door slams shut and nobody is home anymore. The mosquito starves, not because it isn't aggressive, but because its entire survival depended on someone else showing up. That's them, aggressive but helpless, loud but powerless, chasing a version of you that no longer exists. And chosen one, this is the part they will never admit. They didn't admire you. They didn't respect you. They didn't love you in any healthy way. They needed you. They needed your empathy to feel human. They needed your attention to feel relevant. They needed your reactions to feel alive. And now you've gone quiet, the emotional equivalent of turning off a life support machine they pretended they weren't hooked up to. People don't crave connection. Broken people crave distraction. You were their distraction from their own emptiness. Think about this metaphor. Imagine a vine wrapped around a tree. From a distance, the vine looks strong, powerful, thriving. But if the tree steps away, even an inch, the vine collapses under its own weight. The vine was never alive because of itself. It was alive because of what it latched onto. You were the tree. They were the vine. You grew, they clung. You stepped back, they fell. Their hunger is loud now. That's why they're trying little tricks. A random message, a subtle post, a fake joke, a memory they toss your way like bait on a hook. They don't want you back. They want the energy hit they lost. They want the version of themselves that only existed when you were reacting. And here's a brutal truth your mind might whisper. Why do they still check on me if they never truly cared? Because withdrawal pulls people back toward their supply source, even if pride tells them not to. They don't want you, they want the high. Imagine a radio station that plays the same song every day. Their followers depend on that station. They build routines around it. Then, one morning, silence. Static. No warning, no replacement. The listeners lose balance. They refresh the station. They check their devices. They panic because the background noise they relied on is gone. You were that station. Your silence is that static, and they can't tune into you anymore. Here's the quote they'd hate hearing. When you stop feeding people your energy, you expose who can survive on their own and who can't. You took your energy back. You stopped explaining yourself. You stopped justifying your emotions. You stopped giving them the reactive spark they fed on. You stopped being their emotional buffet. And now they're starving. They're realizing something they avoided for years. You weren't just someone they liked having around. You were the emotional engine that made them feel bigger than they really were. You were the confidence they pretended was theirs. You were the mirror that reflected a version of them they liked better than reality. Now the mirror is gone. Now the reflection is gone. Now they're standing face to face with themselves, and they don't like what they see. That's why they're restless. That's why they're irritated. That's why they're posting weird things online. That's why they're trying to get your attention again. They're not trying to reconnect. They're trying to refill, but you've grown past that role. You've shut the door. And here's another truth. When a chosen one cuts you off, it's not punishment, it's protection for their soul. They thought your energy was public property. They thought your heart was an open bar. They thought your kindness was a lifelong discount. They thought your reactions were guaranteed. But you've changed the rules. They can scream into the void now. They can send messages into silence now. They can replay old memories now. But the door is locked. You're not cold. You're not cruel. You're finally unavailable to the wrong people. The universe is rewarding your silence by starving the people who abused your noise. They're learning the lesson they never wanted to face. You were never obsessed with them. They were obsessed with the attention you gave them. Now that the attention is gone, so is their fake power. So let them starve for it. Let them feel the emptiness they tried to fill with you. Let them sit with the quiet that reflects their true size. Let them miss the version of themselves they could only access through your energy. Because the real transformation isn't that you cut them off. It's that you finally realized none of them were feeding you. You were feeding them. And now that you've stopped, they're starving on the floor of a kingdom they built out of your energy. And you, chosen one, have walked out with the crown they never wanted you to know you were wearing. Number 3, your quiet turned their mind into a locked cell. Nothing traps a guilty person faster than silence they can't escape from. That's the punch hitting them day and night now. You didn't punish them. You didn't expose them. You didn't drag their name anywhere. You just went quiet. And that quiet shut the door on their mind like a prison cell slamming shut. Now they're stuck inside their own thoughts, replaying every moment they hoped you'd never think about again. Imagine this. Someone running from their shadow. No matter how fast they move, it follows. That's them. They can run from you, but they can't outrun the echo of what they did. Before, they had your words to hide behind. They could twist them, argue with them, or pretend they misunderstood. But silence? Silence gives them nowhere to run, nowhere to hide, nowhere to dump the blame. Another metaphor for you. Think of a criminal in a courtroom who kept shouting over the evidence, drowning it out with noise. That was them back when you still explained yourself. But now the courtroom is silent. The judge is gone, the jury is gone, and all that's left is the evidence looping inside their own brain. Every lie, every betrayal, every moment they tried to downplay. It's all on repeat, and this time, there's no volume knob. They might be wondering, why can't I shake this off? Why does your quiet feel so heavy? Because guilt doesn't come from your voice. It comes from their conscience waking up now that it has nothing else to distract itself with. Psychology backs this up. When external noise disappears, internal thoughts get louder. You didn't give them peace by stepping back. You gave them a mirror they can't put down. Imagine being trapped in a room with a recording of your worst moments playing non-stop. That's their mind right now. Their actions are haunting them louder than you ever could. And here's the quote that hits hardest. Your silence is the confession they refused to make out loud. They know your absence isn't random, it's earned. Every time they feel irritated, you're not engaging. Every time they tell someone a twisted version of the story. Every time they try to paint you as dramatic. It's just them clawing at the cell walls. They're trying to rewrite their reputation because they can't rewrite what they actually did. The beauty of your silence is this. You're not trying to make them guilty. You're not demanding apologies. You're not chasing closure. You're not proving your innocence. You left the courtroom entirely, and the moment you walked out, their mind locked the door behind you. Now they're stuck with the truth. No debate, no excuses, no distractions, just the cold realization that they were wrong. And here's the part that will follow them for years. Guilt fades when someone can justify their choices, but your silence gave them nothing to justify with. No argument to twist, no message to flip, no reaction to spin. Just the truth, and the knowledge that you don't need to say a single word for that truth to crush them. That's why they're restless. That's why they're irritated. That's why your name makes their chest tighten. Your silence didn't just expose them, it imprisoned them, and they'll feel that every single time their mind circles back to you. Number 4, you walked out of their storm. Now their lightning can't touch you. Chaos only works on the people still standing close enough to get hit. That's the punch landing on them right now. They can't touch you because you're not in the blast zone anymore. They can scream, provoke, twist stories, throw jabs into the air. But all their chaos falls flat because the target they built their whole strategy around has stepped out of reach. Imagine this: someone shadowboxing in an empty ring, throwing punches, talking trash, waiting for a fight that already left the building. That's them now. Every insult they launch, every bait they toss out, every little dramatic stunt they try to provoke you with, it all lands on the floor with no audience, no impact, no reaction. And nothing wounds a manipulator more than realizing their tricks have stopped working. Another picture for you. Think of a storm trying to strike a mountain that moved. Lightning hits the empty ground over and over, confused why nothing is reacting. That's exactly why they're frustrated. They didn't expect you to leave their world. They expected you to argue, defend, explain, step into the chaos the way you always did. But you've grown out of that arena. You don't dance in storms anymore. You study them from a distance. You might wonder, why does it bother them so much that I'm calm now? Because calm means power. Calm means control. Calm means they no longer have access to the buttons they used to press like toys. They don't know how you feel, what you think, or what you're planning. And people who rely on manipulation panic when their map stops working. Silence isn't retreat, it's elevation. That's the truth they can't swallow. You're operating on a different frequency now. Their gossip sounds like static. Their insults bounce off the armor you built. Their chaos no longer pulls you in. You've stepped into strategy mode, and strategy is the one language they can't speak. Imagine someone throwing stones into the sky, hoping one will reach the moon. That's how useless their attempts to reach you have become. You didn't just step away, you ascended into a place they can't climb to. And the moment they realize they can't drag you back into their storm is the moment they understand they never controlled you. You're no longer their target, you're the one rewriting the entire game. Number 5, you shifted the battlefield to terrain their weakness can't survive on. Bullies only win on playgrounds they built themselves. That's the gut shot hitting them right now. They spent years perfecting their little battlefield, stacking the rules in their favor, memorizing every dirty trick they could use to corner you. But the second you walked away from their arena, their entire war plan fell apart like wet paper. Imagine this: someone trains their whole life to fight underwater, believing everyone else will drown. They learn how to twist, flip, and cheat the currents. But then you drag the fight onto dry land. Suddenly, they're gasping, flailing, unable to move the way they used to. That's what you did when you removed yourself from their chaos. You took the entire conflict to a space where manipulation can't breathe. Here's the quote that bites them hardest. You didn't beat them, you made them irrelevant. They thought they cornered you. They thought they trapped you inside circles of gossip, emotional traps, twisted arguments, and predictable reactions. But your silence wasn't escape. It was elevation. You didn't stay and prove your strength on their tiny battlefield. You built a new one where truth doesn't need defending and chaos has no power. You might wonder, did I walk away too easily? No. You didn't walk away. You upgraded. You stepped into a level where their weapons don't work. Their lies can't spread in communities you've outgrown. Their traps collapse when you stop stepping into rooms they haunt. The war didn't end because you surrendered. It ended because you chose the battleground, and they can't survive there. Imagine a chess player bragging about their strategy, only to realize you've stopped playing chess entirely. They're still obsessing over pawns and rooks while you're living in real life, untouched. Every swing they take now hits nothing but air. Every rumor they start dies before it reaches you. Every attempt to provoke you crumbles because there's no hook left to grab. And here's the kill shot. When you choose the battlefield, the war ends before it begins. You ended the war the moment you moved it someplace they can't stand, can't reach, and can't control. They didn't lose to you. They lost to their own smallness. Number 6. You shrunk their role until they couldn't pretend they mattered anymore. Nothing destroys a narcissist faster than realizing they were never the main character. That's the blade sliding under their ribs right now. They truly believed they were unforgettable, that your world revolved around them, that they were the star of a story you were lucky to witness. But the second you went quiet, the second you cut the emotional cord, you didn't just step back. You rewrote the entire script and demoted them to a footnote. Imagine this scene, an actor who has spent years believing they're the lead. They practice the walk, the smile, the dramatic pauses. They soak up applause like it's their birthright. Then one day, the director hands out the new script. Their character still exists, but only as a blurry background extra walking past in one scene. No lines, no spotlight, no importance. That's exactly what your silence did to them. You didn't fight them, you removed their stage. Here's the truth that burns them alive. You didn't replace them with a person, you replaced them with peace. And peace is something they can't compete with. You might be wondering, why does my silence hit them harder than any goodbye? Because goodbyes give people closure. Closure lets them pretend the story ended on their terms. But your silence removed their script entirely. No final scene, no emotional explosion, no dramatic farewell they can twist into a narrative of "I still mattered." You just stopped. And that quiet ending is the one ending manipulators fear most, because it leaves them with nothing to hold on to. Imagine a spotlight shutting off mid-performance. The audience isn't clapping, the stage crew isn't watching, the actor stands there blinking in the dark, unsure if the show ended or if they were simply cut from it. That's the humiliation they're living with now. Your silence didn't fade them out slowly. It erased the illusion they built, the illusion that they were central, important, irreplaceable in your life. And here's another gut punch. They weren't unforgettable. They were just loud. Loud people confuse noise with meaning. They thought because they shook your emotions, they held a permanent seat in your mind. But all you did was step back, and suddenly their entire identity collapsed. Now watch their behavior. The subtle jabs, the weird baiting comments, the exaggerated social media performances that are way too loud for the audience they actually have. Those aren't signs of confidence. Those are signs of someone who knows they've been pushed out of the story but is desperately trying to claw their way back in. Your indifference is the real punishment. They can survive your anger. Anger means attention. They can survive your disappointment. Disappointment means they still matter. But your quiet, your stillness, your emotional neutrality, that is the cold edge of true irrelevance. You erased their access. You erased their influence. You erased the role they thought was theirs forever. And now they're choking on the truth. You were never the reason I stopped caring. My peace was. They're not losing to another person. They're losing to the version of you that finally values peace more than chaos, boundaries more than reactions, and truth more than noise. And here's the kicker that will echo in their mind every time they think of you. They didn't get written out because you hate them. They got written out because they stopped being relevant to the version of you that's rising. For someone who fed on your attention, becoming a footnote isn't just painful, it's fatal to their ego. And now, chosen one, they have to watch you continue your story while they become nothing more than a shadow fading behind you. Number 7. You're evolving off radar, and they can't attack what they can't track. Nothing is more terrifying to a control freak than realizing the person they once studied has gone dark. That's the punch knocking the wind out of them now. They used to swear they had you figured out. They thought they memorized your patterns, your reactions, your rhythms. They believed your whole identity lived inside a little box they built for you. But the box is empty now. You walked out. You reinvented yourself somewhere they can't see, can't follow, and definitely can't sabotage. Imagine this. Someone holding an old blueprint of a building that doesn't exist anymore. They walk around confident, pointing at the map like they still know the layout. But every door they try is gone. Every hallway has collapsed. Every exit leads nowhere. That's what your silence has done. They're navigating a version of you that died months ago. And here's the quote that slices deepest. You didn't disappear. You upgraded in private. Your silence wasn't stagnation. It was renovation. While they were laughing, assuming you went still, you were quietly rearranging your entire foundation. You were healing in ways they never imagined. You were sharpening skills they didn't know you owned. You were gathering strength they never expected you to have. They can't handle that. People like them only feel powerful when they can predict. They only feel safe when they can monitor. You stole their favorite weapon the moment you went invisible to their expectations. Imagine a hunter circling the same clearing, waiting for prey. They know the angles, they know the scent, they know the timing. But instead of finding you, they find empty tracks leading into a forest they've never seen before. Panic hits because they know one truth. You can't hunt what no longer stands where you left it. And that's you now, a moving target evolving in silence. You might wonder, what exactly scares them about my transformation? Everything. The confidence in your voice, the stillness in your reactions, the new clarity in your eyes, the way you don't explain yourself anymore because you don't need to. They're catching pieces of the new you like shadows on a wall. They can sense something is changing, but they can't grasp it. They can't predict what you'll do next. They can't prepare their attacks. They can't judge a version of you they've never met. Here's another truth hitting them like a hammer. They can't destroy foundations they never saw you build. The opportunities forming around you, hidden, the strength developing in your silence, untouchable, the boundaries forming in your spirit, unbreakable, your peace out of their jurisdiction. Imagine a phone trying to connect to a Wi-Fi network that no longer exists. It searches and searches and searches. That's them trying to reconnect to an old frequency you no longer broadcast on. You moved to a higher bandwidth, one built on discipline, awareness, and self-respect. And they can't tune into it no matter how loudly they scream. And the cruelest part for them, every day you transform off their radar, the distance between you grows. Every improvement you make in private is another mile they can't cross. Every layer you shed pushes you further from the version of you they could manipulate. By the time your transformation becomes visible, when the world finally sees the strength you've been building, it won't be a warning shot. It'll be the announcement that the race ended a long time ago. And they were left standing at the starting line, clutching a map of someone who doesn't exist anymore. That's the nightmare they're living with now. They can't stop a version of you they can't see. They can't fight someone who outgrew the battlefield. They can't track the chosen one who's chosen evolution over exposure. Your silence wasn't an escape. It was the cocoon, and the version of you emerging now is something they were never prepared to face. Because you didn't grow in front of them, you grew beyond them. Number 8, you didn't just close the door, you demolished the entire entrance. Nothing terrifies the entitled more than realizing access to you wasn't paused, it was permanently revoked. That's the gut punch ripping through them now. They spent months comforting themselves with a lie, that your silence was temporary, that you were just in a mood, that eventually you'd open the door and let them stroll back in like nothing happened. But lies have an expiration date, and theirs just rotted in their hands. They're finally facing the truth. There is no door, there is no way back. There is no version of you that they can still reach. Imagine someone leaving a room for a moment, expecting to return. Only when they come back, the entire building is gone. Foundation erased, walls vanished, floor ripped up. That's what your evolution feels like to them. They thought you were taking a break from them, not breaking free from them. Here's the quote echoing in the back of their mind. You didn't walk away to hurt them. You walked away because you outgrew who you were around them. And that's what terrifies them most. At first, they told themselves stories to stay calm. They'll come back. They just need space. They're just being dramatic. But as days turned into weeks and weeks turned into months, their comfort cracked. What once felt fixable suddenly felt final. The distance stopped being a gap. It became a canyon. Now they're hit with a revelation sharp enough to cut them open. This isn't a timeout. This isn't a pause. This is the after version of your life, and they're not in it. Imagine a person standing where the front door used to be, reaching for a handle that's no longer there. That's them. They press against empty air, expecting something solid, something familiar, but the entrance they relied on has been torn down completely. You didn't just close the door on them. You built an entirely new world where they don't have a key, a path, or a purpose. And here's the psychological dagger. They're realizing they didn't lose you because someone replaced them. They lost you because peace replaced them. You don't need their apology. You don't need their approval. You don't need their presence to validate your existence. You've shifted into a frequency that can't be accessed through manipulation, drama, or guilt. And they are not built for that frequency. Your silence is no longer a message. It's a border. A border that says, I don't live in that old reality anymore. The version of you they controlled is dead. The version of you that apologized too much is gone. The version of you that tolerated their games has evaporated. And with that version gone, so is their control. Imagine them pacing outside, waiting for a door that will never reappear. The panic comes in waves. The regret comes in flashes. The realization comes like ice water poured over pride. They thought they could always come back. They thought you'd always be available. They thought you'd always leave a light on for them, but you turned the entire house into something new, and they're not on the blueprints. The most brutal truth they must swallow is this: you didn't abandon anything. You upgraded. They're the ones left empty-handed. They're the ones left outside. They're the ones realizing too late that the door they kept taking for granted doesn't exist anymore. Number 9. Your power now lives in everything you refuse to give away. Real strength isn't what you fight for, it's what you no longer waste energy on. That's the truth slicing through them now. They can't take anything from you anymore because you finally figured out the most elite form of power: withholding. Not out of spite, not out of fear, out of mastery. There was a time when you poured yourself out like it was your job, explaining, defending, clarifying, responding, reacting. You thought showing up proved loyalty. You thought giving chances meant love. You thought speaking your truth meant growth. But each time you gave, they took. And each time they took, they twisted. They fed off your reactions like fuel. Now, the power dynamic is flipped. Imagine someone trying to steal from a well that suddenly ran dry, not because it was empty, but because the source chose to redirect itself. That's you. You didn't lose energy, you reclaimed it. Here's the brutal quote they'll never admit stings. They didn't lose access because you changed. They lost access because they wasted it. Your silence isn't passive. It's engineered. You could respond. You could destroy their ego with one sentence. You could expose every lie and every manipulation they ever used. But the real flex is that you don't have to. Your restraint hits harder than any comeback. Imagine a boxer stepping out of the ring mid-fight. The opponent keeps swinging at empty air, punching nothing, burning energy, looking foolish. That's them now. They're throwing bait, drama, provocations. And every time you don't respond, you remind them that they no longer have pull, access, or relevance. Every unanswered message is a closed gate. Every ignored insult is a shattered weapon. Every moment of silence is a declaration of power. You don't get to touch my peace anymore. People who thrive on control crumble when they lose their ability to provoke. Your silence has become a wall they can't climb and a mirror they can't look away from. It reflects their desperation, their childishness, their loss of influence. Imagine someone trying to light a fire underwater. That's them trying to spark a reaction from you now. Their old tricks don't work. Their favorite buttons don't respond. Their ego is suffocating because the food source, your attention, is gone. And here's the psychological dagger. What you withhold hurts them more than anything you ever said. You didn't just leave their battlefield, you ascended to a level where their weapons don't reach. They're still fighting a war you've already outgrown. They're still plotting moves in a game you don't even play anymore. You're not on defense, you're not on offense. You're off the grid entirely. They hate it because they can't measure you, they can't provoke you, they can't access you, they can't predict you. And now they're learning the final truth. Strength isn't always the blow you throw. It's the blow you decide isn't worth your energy. They lost the moment you stopped offering yourself. You won the moment you realized your silence is a force, not a void. And chosen one, you're not just ahead. You're untouchable. And your silence reshaped the entire battlefield, chosen one, and now you're moving with a power they can't touch or track. You don't need to prove anything. You don't need to defend anything. Your evolution already spoke for you. If this message hit home, press the like button if you haven't already, and if you're still not part of this family, make sure to hit that subscribe button. Your journey is only getting stronger from here, and you're exactly where you're meant to be.